Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's developer coaching webinar. My name is Tara Van Cleve, and I'm part of the technical marketing organization here at Oracle. So today we are excited to walk through an end-to-end business scenario demonstrating the use of OCI Language Service and its integration with Oracle Integration Cloud, covering both the business and technical aspects of the use case. I'd also like to note that we are recording the webinar, so you will receive the replay via the same email that you registered with shortly after today's event concludes. If you have any questions, we have enabled the Q&A section of the Zoom, and we'll be answering your questions throughout the hour, as well as leaving some time at the end for any of the open remaining questions. So today's webinar will be presented by Wilson Randall, Senior Cloud Engineer. So without further ado, Wilson, take it away.
Thank you, Tara, for that glowing introduction. Let me share my slides just to intro us. So, as Tara said, we'll be going through an end-to-end use case on both the business side and technical side, with our main focal point being OCI AI language service uh, for computing some key entities, some key phrases in our language input. We'll get into that later, and also tying that together with a few other cloud services in Oracle Integration Cloud. So, agenda for the presentation today and the demo, just going to open it up with a explanation of the Oracle Cloud services that we'll be using, just so you know before going into the actual use case, what tools are we using? What's the platform? What are the capabilities? And just to give you a better understanding of that. Then we'll get into the business use case, what ways can we apply these technologies? What ways can we use these services in a business scenario, real life scenario? We'll get into the technical use case, so getting more into the nitty-gritty details of our use case, getting down to the architecture and API level. And then we'll actually take a demonstration. So I'll demo and I'll run through and I'll show each one of those services, and then finally an end-to-end integration flow. So to start out, just wanted to introduce Oracle's overall AI stack. So there's a lot going on in the AI space right now, of course. And Oracle brings to the table a lot of exciting new AI services as part of its offerings. Now, some of these we'll be looking at, some of these will be for different sessions at a different time, but the ones that we are primarily going to be looking at are going to be speech, document understanding, and our main star of the show is going to be language today. Now, there's a lot of other cool AI services like Gen AI, generative AI, where you think about large language models, LLMs, thinking about data generation, summarization, transformation. Now, the use case today can potentially include some of those aspects, but really the core is going to be around those three AI services that you see highlighted there in speech, document understanding, and of course, mainly language. Um, as as Oracle constantly updates and makes changes and makes improvements to these services, this list will expand, it will change, it will, become more refined. So, um, please pay attention to these services as we move forward here. But again, main focal point for today going to be that OCI language, AI language service, also accentuated by document understanding and speech. So let's get into OCI language and why are we using it as part of this use case? What does it bring to the table? So with OCI language, you can analyze text. It's primarily a text analysis AI service that uses Oracle's pre-trained models. You can also train your own model. But there are a number of explanations, a number of capabilities that are possible through OCI AI language, useful in a variety of situations. It's also got translation, which was recently added, in addition to the core text analysis capabilities, which is very exciting. Um, Also especially useful if you use that in conjunction with the language detection. But name of the game with the OCI AI language service is text analysis at scale, performing that analysis, getting good insight out of your text. And to kind of break down what each capability or what each function OCI AI language service brings to the table. So there's several different types of analysis that you can perform on the text that you give AI language service. So let's start from the top. You got language detection, which is basically detecting the language. It does what it says. It detects the language that you give AI language service. So if you give it an English text, it's going to respond back, okay, this is English. Or if you give it Spanish, it's going to respond back, okay, this is Spanish. So pretty straightforward, right? The idea here is that you'll use it in conjunction with something like the language translation service down below, or the language translation functionality. So first, let's say if you get a document or if you get a recording, convert it to text, which we'll see later, understand what language am I listening to, or what language is this text that you've just given me in language detection. Now I'm going to translate that language now that I know what language it actually is. Something like that. Various other use cases you can do, but that's just an idea. And that's also part of OCI Language Service, part of the same package. You've also got named entity recognition here. And what this does is it identifies important pieces of information in the text that you've given AI language service. So things like names, people, places, organizations, dates or times, quantities, amounts of money, things like that. So it's really kind of cutting the noise out of a conversation, out of the text input, and really getting down to what are the important entities or the important objects, people, places, things in that input text. Next, we have sentiment analysis, and this is also useful in a variety of situations, but this is a measurement of mood or tone in the text. So how someone feels about something. There's different levels of sentiment analysis that we'll get into as well. So you can measure someone's feeling about a particular topic, a particular entity. How does a customer feel about this product that they're reviewing? Or how does this customer feel about you? Or how does they feel about your company? It can also be sentence to sentence. So, if someone's going through making a speech, you can look at, okay, how do they feel from their intro sentence versus the middle of their paragraphs versus, kind of the conclusion and kind of measure their sentiment all along the way. And then there's entire document, whole document sentiment. How do they feel based on their entire speech or their entire recording and their entire text that you fed into the OCI language service? Lots of capability you can unlock with that one. With text classification, and a couple more ideas actually before we move on to that. A couple more ideas. How can you use sentiment analysis? Something like maybe you are a e-commerce company or maybe you're delivering products and you allow customers to review those products. Maybe you can set up an integration or a process that goes in, feeds all of that text of those product reviews into an OCI language service, respond back to the sentiment so you understand at scale how are your customers feeling about your products, what particular entities or what particular parts of the product do they like, what particular parts do they not like, and then ultimately the real core of it is how am I going to make changes to my business? How am I going to go back and change my product to address those sentiments, to address the good parts and the bad parts of that product. Something like that. Next, we've got text classification, and this categorizes the text based on a certain set of topics like industry that you're in, for example. So if I'm talking about cars or if I'm talking about finance, it's going to say, okay, this document is talking about automotive industry, or this document is talking about business and finance, or things like that. So that's particularly useful if you want to understand the topic. Key phrase extraction, that is what is being talked about, but especially what are the important parts of the conversation. So that would be something like you go in and you want to understand not only what's being talked about, but you want to cut out the noise and understand what are the key points of that conversation. And then we also have a couple that were added for detecting health in PII entities. What's PII? Personally identifiable information. So this is very useful um, in something like a redaction scenario or a compliance scenario where maybe you're reading in your source data and it contains sensitive information that you want to redact and get out of that text so you can process it, kind of cleanse it, and comply with data regulations, things like that. So in certain industries, especially in the health industry with HIPAA, but also in certain industries like finance, like you want to take out identifiable information, HR data like addresses, phone numbers, even names if you want to process data in a certain way. Very useful for situations like that. And then finally, we have language translation. Does exactly what it says. You can translate languages on the fly in a service-based scenario through OCI Language Service. So you can detect the language that your document or your text is coming from, or if you know it, you can explicitly say that too. Translate it on the fly to whatever target language you want to. There's certain sets of languages that are supported and unsupported, but there's quite a few that are supported. So that's a very exciting one as well. Very useful for, working across teams, or let's say if you had a team in Latin America that you wanted to respond to tickets in English or vice versa. Super useful for, kind of international or multilingual scenarios. So that was a little overview of OCI language. Now let's go into a couple of other supporting cloud services that we'll also be looking at. Now these are more in a supporting scenario or in a supporting way in our overall solution. These won't be the core focus. Really, that core focus is going to be the OCI language as our kind of our core computation engine. But we also have OCI speech. And the role of OCI speech here, also another AI service delivered by Oracle, is going to be the transcribing of audio to text in our use case. So let's say, so for OCI language, when we feed it in data, when we feed it in our information, it's got to be in text, right? So with introducing OCI speech into the mix, we unlock a multi-channel ingestion of this data. So it could be from text, sure, but it can also be from something like a recorded call that will take that recording, translate it into text, and then ultimately be able to feed that into OCI AI language service. So that's what it's primarily doing here. There's support for multiple languages as well. So you can think of taking a recording of a call in Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, whatever language, translating that into English if that's, where your management team or your analyst team is based out of, and then ultimately running that through OCI language and getting insight out of that translated text. You can also so it'll also translate that into a JSON format. So it's going to be the text plus some metadata into there, which we'll get into a little bit later. Uses object storage for that. There is also live transcription available, But in a lot of these scenarios, you'd likely be doing uh, something in batch, like take a recording of all my phone calls or take a recording of all my Zoom sessions from the last week and batch those together and process those. But live transcription is also supported. And again, you don't have to have a deep understanding of AI, data science, machine learning to benefit from this. It's delivered in more of a, packaged service from Oracle. And then the third service that we're really looking at is document understanding. Like speech, its primary focus in this particular use case is translation as well, or not translation, but kind of transcription, extraction, let's say. And this is really getting text from a page. This is useful in a variety of situations. So you can think of even like a traditional business scenario where a vendor will send you an invoice, or several different vendors will send you invoices to your email inbox, and they'll attach PDFs of those invoice. Well, sure, you could download that invoice and type in all the details into Fusion or whatever your ERP system is and create an invoice. Or you could set up something like an integration that pulls those invoice PDFs, runs it through document understanding, extracts all of the key information from that invoice, and then goes into your ERP system and creates an invoice from the data from the fields that it just extracted off of that PDF document. In our case, it's a little bit more um, taking a little bit more of a smaller role, and that is to extract text off of a page. So this also, like speech, allows us to get that multi-channel ingestion of data where we can pull data uh, from audio, sure, through speech, but we can also pull it through documents, PDFs, images, whatever format is supported from document understanding as well, ingest that as text. And how do we tie all of these together with OCI language, document understanding, and OCI speech? And the answer is through Oracle Integration Cloud in this particular scenario. So, Oracle Integration Cloud is Oracle's flagship cloud integration platform as a service. Um, it is our primary application integration platform, and it's the latest and greatest when it comes to that. So just a little standard service overview of what OIC is and what use cases, what applications it can touch. Being an integration platform, just by nature, it can touch a lot when it comes to use cases. Um, but there's quite a lot from, your traditional application integration with ERP, Oracle applications, third-party applications, but there's also some database level integrations. You can integrate with on-premise systems or private network systems as well as cloud-based systems. There's a few other kind of extensions or additions into the integration platform, in addition to the core app integration platform, like a FTP server that's included. There's a process automation platform. If you have like a human workflow approval type use case, that's included with enterprise version of OIC. Visual Builder, if you want like a an application builder or a low code development platform. There's a lot that integration touches, but this is how we will tie together our orchestration and our flow of those AI services together. And does OIC actually do that? And how does OIC actually connect with those application services, APIs, etc.? Through the adapters. So there's a lot of adapters that are out of the box that allows OIC to talk to these services and applications. No doubt, no surprise that Oracle connects very well with Oracle. So you'll see a suite of pretty much every Oracle application under the sun. But there's also Oracle database, third-party databases, some third-party applications like Salesforce, SAP. There's quite a lot of additional supporting applications as well. New healthcare adapters also supported. Just want to shout out that in the healthcare flavor of OIC. And then also a lot of technology adapters available as well. So if there's not a purpose-built adapter out of the box, no worries. If it's got an API, if it's got a web service, if it's got some file-based interface exposed, it's likely that we can connect to it through the use of one of those technology adapters. In our case, when we are connecting to OCI Language Service, OCI Speech, and OCI Document Understanding, we will be going through REST adapter because they expose REST APIs. We'll get into the specifics of that later. So let's get into the business scenario now. There's definitely many ways in which you can leverage these AI services and find value in these AI services. But the one that I chose is something like a call center um, or getting customer feedback and making changes to my business in order to better fit their expectations to fix issues with my product. So something like understanding when my customers are calling my company on something like a support call or creating tickets or understanding what reviews they're writing about my product. I want to run that through something like OCI AI Language Service, understand what are the key topics are they talking about. If I'm an automotive customer and I'm making catalytic converters, something like that, are they liking the design of the product? Is it fitting their vehicle? Is there any adjustments that I need to make to the measurements? Is it sounding okay? Are they finding the increase in reliability or increase in, miles per gallon of their vehicle? Understanding the topics of what they're talking about is important, and then understanding how they actually feel about each one of those topics. So running it through that sentiment analysis of OCI language service. That's one example. You could also use it to, if I was something like a healthcare provider or an insurance provider, something like that, and I want to run that data, run customer data through some analysis for, higher ups to look at or an analyst team to look at, but I don't want to expose personally identifiable information or any of that health data. I can run it through OCI language to redact that personally identifiable information, that health data. Talked about the call center and kind of customer support. You can also think of it as kind of an orchestration, like a dispatch scenario where maybe I have a common call center for my entire company. If it's a customer having connectivity issues, maybe I route that to the IT team based on the input that they have given me. If it's like an internal customer wanting to get clearance to purchase a new laptop or something, maybe route that to my supply chain team or my internal, logistics team. Or if it's someone calling about a job posting, maybe I route that to my recruiting team. And how do we actually identify what they're talking about? Through OCI language service. Now, there's a ton of other services that can do routing, but this is particularly if I want to build that pipeline. I want to look at that data and compute. Talked about call center. And then ultimately, I do want to, well, before we get into that, you can also do language translation and things like that to get that data kind of homogenized, get it into a singular format. Maybe you're ingesting data from calls, maybe it's from documents, maybe you're pulling it from APIs or emails. Getting it into that single format so that you can feed it into OCI language is a good for kind of the pre-processing. But ultimately, what I wanted to get at is, okay, we can feed all this data, we can translate it. What does that actually mean for the business? What we want to do then is make changes to the business, get insight, and make better changes in order to meet expectations of my customers, in order to correct common issues with my product, in order to make my business run better, essentially. So now let's shift into kind of the notional architecture of what something might look like with all of these services together. So we saw document understanding and speech here from our previous slides. These allow us to take in ingest data in a number of supported formats. So it could be something like I'm reading in documents from an email. You know, my customers or my vendors are sending me certain documents, and I'm just going to go through, download those documents, and then ultimately we are converting them into text or JSON format to feed into OCI language. But I also want to make clear here that it doesn't necessarily have to be document understanding and speech to get that data the way that you need to feed it into OCI language. You could do something as simple as calling an API. You know, maybe I've got a CRM system, or maybe I've got a ticketing system set up that already creates, you know, summaries, or already creates recordings, or already creates main points. And I can just call an API that fetches that data that then I feed into something like OCI language. So just want to emphasize that we're setting up these services here and kind of the pre-processing side in order to kind of homogenize our data in order to get it into a good format that we can use downstream. So again, reading in documents through document understanding, or reading in something like a recorded call or a recorded Zoom webinar or what have you through OCI speech. Now these go through object storage because it's likely when you're running this analysis at scale that you're going to want to batch those together. You're going to want to, you know, take all my recordings for the past day or the past week, or all my documents plus recordings of the past day or past week, and run those through. So we land those into object storage as kind of our processing zone or a parking lot for us to convert and send through OCI language. Doesn't have to be, I want to mention. So document understanding does have a synchronous API for smaller documents, where you can you know, call it as a REST service. It gives you the output directly in a synchronous manner. Likewise, OCI Speech does have live transcribe now supported. But again, in most scenarios where you're doing this analysis at scale, it's likely going to be something asynchronous. So that's why we have object storage here. Anyway, so we are ingesting that data through document understanding, OCI Speech, through an API, through a database call, whatever it may be. And we are finally passing that into OCI language. This is going to be the name of the game, the star of our show. This is going to actually perform the computation, perform the analysis on that text that we pass in. So all that before is just raw text. That's just the recording, the document, the raw information, the raw data. Now I want to actually get some insight. I want to get some analysis out of that. And if you think back to those language capabilities, it would be doing something like, what are my key phrases in that document? What are my entities in that document? What does my customer feel? What is their sentiment of each one of those entities or key topics in that document? Really refining that raw data, that raw material, getting it into something that I, as a business manager, can use to alter my business, to improve my business downstream. But OCI language is going to give that to you as a JSON object on the other side, or, you know, if you're using the SDK, the software development kits, it's going to give it to you in code on the other side. In our case, we're going to be getting it as a JSON object. Where are we going to put that data? Totally makes sense to put it in something like an Oracle database. So we'll be putting that into an Oracle data warehouse, or an autonomous data warehouse today, because that will unlock a lot of analysis and analytics capability on top of what we've already got with the refinement of that data. So in our case, we'll drop it into some tables in autonomous database. And from here, there is a lot of ways that you could take the further analysis. I'm going to call it analytics, the further analytics of that data. So you could hook it up to something like Oracle Analytics Cloud, build some analytics models around it, you know, run your computations, run summarization of that. That's in a more structured manner, which is definitely possible, definitely something that that we can handle well. Um, but it doesn't necessarily have to be super structured. It doesn't necessarily have to be an analysis that you do in Oracle Analytics Cloud. It could be something like introducing something like Oracle Select AI, and um, that will allow like business managers to log in and ask Oracle Autonomous Database questions, which will then convert into SQL and return back some data. So like if you were asking what are my most liked features of my recently released product, and then Select AI can go in there, generate SQL to find the most recently created batched lines that were inserted in the last run, look at the sentiment analysis score, and then return back the lines with the highest positive score for the most recently batched insert, something like that, just as a practical example. Uh, you could use some other possibilities here. You could use something like data integration as well. So here I used application integration because I am doing some file movement with object storage through REST APIs. I'm doing some document understanding runs to convert my text through REST API. I'm running OCI speech to convert my recordings to text through REST API. I'm running OCI language to compute to actually, analyze that text through REST API. And then ultimately I'm inserting a moderate amount of data, not a huge amount, but a moderate amount of data into Oracle Autonomous Database. And that's all achievable through something like Oracle Integration Cloud, where you're calling APIs, you're doing some mapping, you're doing some light translation, you're moving a little bit of data here and there in a transactional manner. Um, but this, you could plausibly also use something like data integration service as well from Oracle, where maybe instead of calling some APIs, maybe you want to run these as batch process, and maybe you've got terabytes of data that you're moving, like large amounts of data from object storage into ADB, or maybe you're doing an ETL process in addition to this. Data integration service could plausibly come into play there as well. Um, you could even do something like after you've got the data, the analyze or yeah, analyze data from OCI language into autonomous database, use something like a combination of vector search and generative AI to take a different approach. This would be like generating summarized reports out of the data from ADW. This would be a much more fluid and dynamic approach to that analysis. It wouldn't be as rigid as something like creating a, structured model and looking at tables and predefined SQL statements and things like that, but it would be much more fluid, taking to advantage of those AI services. Um, so enough talk. Let's actually look at a demo now. Okay, so I will be showing several of the services mentioned from that notional architecture. Now, I'll be showing all of them. Um, for let's start with document understanding. So let's go over here to our hamburger menu selection. It's going to be under analytics and AI. And under AI services, you see here document understanding. So we're going to come over here. Gives you a little overview in the console here, but we're going to be looking at text extraction. And let's be looking at this file here. So right now we're using a demo file that Oracle is providing to us, and it's analyzing the text here. It's running its service. And this is what we use in our solution in that notional architecture. Again, name of the game here is to get our documents in whatever format they're coming in, whether they be PDFs, images, whatever it may be, into text so that we can feed that into OCI Language Service. So you can see here it's completed. Took a few seconds to compute this through, but we've got a little document on SQL and R and PL SQL and Oracle data mining and things like that. And you can see here it's highlighted each line of our document. If I click, you can see what section of text it's converted that to. But you can see here, standard PDF document. This is not text. It's not like a .txt file or .json file. This is, a PDF file with a banner and graphics and things like that. And document understanding has gone through and extracted all of that text off that page and given it to me in a nice JSON format on the other side of that. You can also see the request and response, and this goes in the context of calling these services as REST APIs, which we'll be doing in our integration. So you can see, if I wanted to actually run this, call it as a REST API, it even gives you the sample data here. So some metadata on where that document is living, and then on the output, you've got quite a lot of metadata on like the vertices of where each one of these sections of text is, and then also the text itself. So callouts or framework, add-ins. Thing is, in OIC, when you're doing the mapping or whatever tool you're using to integrate, you can loop through these objects and concatenate all these text values and get them into like a nice full document, which is what we'll be doing. So, name of the game for document understanding, getting text off of our page, extracting, running through the Oracle pre-trained models, getting text off of these PDFs that we'll be able to feed into OCI language. I want to also highlight key value extraction. Now, this is not something that we are using in our particular use case, but this is something that's also very helpful in a variety of situations, going back to like our invoice processing use case. Now you can see it's pulled text, it's pulled section of texts off of our page, but this is actually now organizing them into key value pairs. Now this is supported for certain files like invoices, purchase orders, receipts, certain business documents. It's not going to support every single particular business document from the pre-trained models, but those that it does support, it works very well by pulling in this particular invoice, the customer address, shipping address, the PO number, the subtotals, shipping cost, the amount due. And from this, what can you do with this? Well, you can go in and say, using these key value pairs, directly create an invoice in your ERP system. Hopefully that's Oracle Fusion, but you can go in and actually make use of this data directly because it's not only extracted, but it's also organized into those key value pairs. Very, very powerful tool here. So that's document understanding in a nutshell. Let's go over to now speech, OCI speech. You can filter at the top, but again, it's also under analytics and AI. So let's go to speech. So with speech, when you're batching them, you're likely going to be creating transcription jobs, but just to show you what it might look like in a live scenario and kind of what's going on when you're batching them using those transcription jobs, I'll create a little transcription here. You have some parameters. Now you can use for these, like if you want it to be in generic or versus medical domain, if you want to include punctuation, if you want to, do silence thresholds, things like that. I'll just leave everything as the default for now. So let me start on, and I'll just give a little sample transcription. Hello, my name is Wilson, and I'm calling about an issue with the high flow catalytic converter replacement that I purchased from your website last week. When I installed the catalytic converter in my vehicle, I got a pesky check engine light that I so dreaded. That being said, I love your products and will keep buying them as long as I keep driving. Is there a way that you could help me with this issue? My phone number is 8675309. And you can see there that it converted that text into, or converted my voice into text and uh, put it right here for us to see. In your scenario, if you're running this in like a real scenario, maybe you have recordings of phone calls that kind of mimic what I just had, what I just said, and then go through and run transcription jobs and get this into text. Because now that it's in text, we can directly feed this into something like OCI Language Service for downstream analysis. So yep, did that just fine. Now let's go and shift to OCI language. And let me actually literally go and copy this text because this is what we're going to be using in OCI language. So it gives you an overview, and you can see all of the pre-trained model capabilities here that we went through earlier. But let's go ahead and analyze text in the console here. Got a sample text here, but I'll just use the one that I just transcribed from my voice. So pretty quickly, it went through and it gave all of the different flavors of text analysis that you can perform on it. So got English. It's 100% sure that it's English. That's right. We're in the automotive classification. So autos and vehicles, vehicles parts, named entity recognition. So, hi, I'm Wilson. Yep, I'm a person. High flow catalytic converter. There's my product. Last week. So it's got a date time there. Got the catalytic converter again. Vehicle. That's another product. Sure. Engine. That's a product. Products. Okay. Yes, a product is a product. And then my phone. And then it's got my phone number here. So it's identified that as a number. Key phrase extraction. Let's cut to the chase. Let's get all of the, uh, you know, non-important language out of the conversation. Let's drill down into what's important, the key phrases. I've got an issue with my catalytic converter replacement. Was on the website last week. Got a check engine light. Here's my phone number. Here's me. Here's my vehicle. So on and so forth. And then the sentiment. Again, we have both aspect and sentence level sentiment. Now, okay, so this sentence level, we can ignore this because I did not include punctuation on my speech. But if you include punctuation, it'll slice and dice that to be different sentences. Anyway, with aspect-based sentiment, you can see that I got that high flow catalytic converter replacement, but it was broken or it didn't work. So it's negative sentiment for that. I got a pesky check engine light. That's pesky. So yeah, we got negative sentiment on that. But I love the products. So that we got a positive sentiment on that. And you can kind of see based on the context of the conversation it's going in and understanding how I feel about certain things, certain aspects of that. And then lastly, we have that personally identifiable information. So we've got my name. It's redacted that. We've got last week if you want to redact date times. And it's got my telephone number and it's redacted a section of that. And you can choose in the fashion that you redact it, but it's gone ahead and done that default for us here. So pretty cool. So then how do we actually make use of this? Again, that's a job for really like a downstream analytics platform or even something like generative AI to summarize the outcome of these, not necessarily the conversation, but the data. So I got all my key phrases. I got the sentiment based on certain aspects. What is the summarization of how my customers are feeling about my products of the last week or last 2 weeks, something like that. So let's go and see how all of these pieces fit together now in an integration. So I will go to my Oracle Integration Cloud instance here, and we'll go over to my projects. I've got a language project here. So what we're looking at now here is Oracle Integration Cloud. That is the integration platform as a service for application integration provided by Oracle. Super useful variety of use cases. Again, integration, it touches a lot. Excuse me. So let's take a look at some of the connections that we've got here. So we've got a connection for something like autonomous database. We've got several different REST connections based on the um, uh, cloud services that we're talking to. So if we're doing AI speech, AI document understanding, AI language, we're calling those as REST APIs. But let's run through something like document understanding to key phrases extraction. It's likely that you would be running a number of these integrations in parallel or at certain times when you're batching your data. So we're starting with a REST trigger, could be scheduled as well, assuming the data is landed somewhere or in some location that you're looping through. We're running text extraction on our upstream data that we're passing in. So let's say I'm passing in like a PDF document with a summary of issues with catalytic converters that we've been having for the past week or so. We're getting the text off of that PDF. We are running it through the detect key phrases endpoint on the OCI AI language service. And then ultimately, we are inserting those key phrases. AI language service is going to give us back those key phrases, and then we're ultimately inserting them into our autonomous database. So this one is, if you're looking at OIC for the first time, it could be, what are all these components? If you're experienced, this might be a simple integration, but this is some example of, okay, we're starting an integration, we're pulling text off a page, we're doing some analysis on that text, and then we're putting that analysis into our database for further safekeeping and downstream analytics. So that's kind of what this integration is doing at a high level. Don't want to get too deep into the weeds on like the mapping and field levels and what's going on like the API endpoint level. Just because I think that'll be a little bit um, too specific, but just want to kind of give you an understanding of how these pieces might fit together. For something like speech, so if we're taking a recorded conversation, maybe we're starting the integration with that recording. We're uploading that recording to object storage. We're performing the transcription job on that speech, so actually taking that audio, translating it into text. We're waiting here just for the speech service to transcribe it. It takes a few seconds depending on the length of that audio recording. And then once it's complete, we can read that transcription file back into OIC. So that's what that's doing there. This could also be asynchronous, like you could wait until like in an event-based scenario, but we're just waiting for a few seconds there. Okay, and then we run it through OCI AI language service once again, this time to detect sentiments. So this AI language service, same exact AI language service that we called from our document understanding integration. Only difference is the upstream kind of pre-processing of that data has changed a little bit. But in this case, we're reading our sentiments, and because um, because the sentiment analysis has both aspect and sentiment analysis that we saw before, we're doing it in parallel. We're inserting those fields into autonomous database in parallel here. And then we're terminating the integration. We're replying back with little success message. So what does the output of this look like? Looks something like this. So I go over to SQL now. I'm in my SQL workbench here. within the OCI console for my Oracle Autonomous Database. If I want to look at my key phrases here after I run that integration. And these are just some columns that I've selected. This is not, this could be, you could pull all of the columns, you could pull all sorts of contextual information in here, but for this, I ran it with a sample document of an introduction to Oracle's Code Innovate program. If you know, you know. This pulled all the text off the page. It gave a score to the key phrases. Oracle AI Language Service identified the key phrases and gave a score on how confident that it was a key phrase. Oracle's Virtual Code Innovate, that's pretty important. 4 hours a day, exactly. Working demo, that's pretty important. Use cases are important. Yep, okay, 99.9% sure. So you can see kind of in an end state for those tables there. Again, this is just sample, this is demo. You can enrich this, you can bring all sorts of other data in here with this, but really the value comes from the AI language output from this. I'll do entities as well. So for something like entities in that document, yep, we've got Oracle, that's an organization. 5, those 5 days that we run that event. Online event, yep, that's an event. Oracle. There's a sample email. We got date times, 4 to 5 days. That's right. And then we got Oracle's Virtual Code Innovate as an event. Absolutely right. So this kind of gives you an idea. And again, from here, the idea is that you hook this into an analytics platform. Maybe you run summarization with Gen AI agents. There's a lot of ways in which you could take this for further downstream analysis. But thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for that. I know that was a lot. Might have been drinking from a fire hose. But that concludes my demonstration and presentation on that end-to-end scenario with text analysis, with OCI speech, document understanding, and Oracle integration in cloud, tying it all together.
Thank you, Wilson. And now we will cover the Code Innovate program. Sean, over to you.
So first and foremost, I just want to take a moment to thank you all for taking some time out of your day, probably on your lunch hour, to attend our presentation demonstration. So my name is Sean Cartwright. I'm a senior cloud engineer and a program manager here at Oracle. And I'm just going to take about 10 minutes or so to explain to you about a program that Aditya and I have been a part of now for going on 4+ years. So let me get into it. What is Virtual Code Innovate? Well, in its simplest form, Code Innovate is a customer enablement and training program for new and existing Oracle customers, supported by a team of deep dive engineers. We have about 20 engineers on our team at this point. What Code Innovate is a 5 half-day online event on Zoom, and it's designed to educate builders on Oracle Cloud. And while producing a first pass prototype on customer selected business challenges. So over the course of a week, participants from your team are paired with an Oracle engineer to guide them through best practices and on how we approach the process of code development or building together. So during this time, we're going to brainstorm on your business challenges that you bring to us. We're going to identify different tasks to complete, and we're going to partner with you over the course of essentially half a week to develop a minimally viable product or an MVP. So whether you guys are novices in Oracle Cloud or you're pros in Oracle Cloud or you've been using it for a long time, you're welcome to participate. So Code Innovate is all about building real solutions for your organization's most pressing business cases that you guys identify. So now I'm going to get into what the Code Innovate experience is. So you may be asking yourself, what does this program offer? What is the process by which we go about getting started and planning for an event? So first, we start by reviewing your strategic use cases, which require at least one, if not multiple technologies to solution for it. Then we go and we pair that use case up with our engineers who have deep experience developing on the required services and potentially oftentimes with similar use cases for our past customer experiences, as we've been with, well over, hundreds of customers now over the last 5 or 6 years. And then with our guidance, we're going to help your organization deliver a first pass prototype or an MVP of of the desired solution. Um, so now I'm going to pivot over and we'll take a closer look at like what the framework of the program is. But firstly, a point I would like to make is that our program does not only support Oracle robotic process automation, RPA, the topic that we're discussing today. It also supports builds with many different infrastructure and platform services on Oracle Cloud, including cloud native services like Oracle Kubernetes Engine or the DevOps service, which is our CI/CD tool. We support Oracle Analytics Cloud, generative AI services, Oracle Digital Assistant, which is our chatbot platform, Oracle Integration Cloud, as Aditya was mentioning earlier, and that includes Visual Builder Studio, which is another CI/CD tool, Visual Builder Cloud Service, which is a mobile and web application creation tool. And there's a whole host of other services, so many that I can't even get into all of them right now in this short amount of time. But suffice to say, most times our use case builds involve multiple different services that comprise the entire prototype solution. So I make this point because oftentimes on our webinars like this, we just focus on a single topic or a product, but our team is capable of resourcing specialists within our team to meet most of the needs that you guys have for your organization as far as your business problems are concerned. So everything that our team works on is a custom built prototype, tailor fit to your use case. So with that being said, here's what sort of the timeline looks like. So once we've agreed on a suitable use case, then we're going to determine an event week, and then we'll start working towards that event week itself, or that 20-hour sprint that we will be working on together. So once we establish that, we work towards the week. There's going to be different things that we have a series of meetings, typically at least once per week, where we're going to help you guys with configuring your tenancy, which is all this pre-event setup, I guess, is what we would call it. But that includes provisioning the services that you guys need, for these solutions, whether it's a RPA, OIC, or anything else in all of the different IaaS and PaaS services that we could touch. Setting up users to make sure that all of the team members that you're going to assign to this effort, that they all have access to these services that they're going to need to use. Connecting to the data sources that we're going to need. Oftentimes, you guys are going to have to, give us the data that we have to use to connect to different systems. If we're talking about integrations, whether those happen to be on public or private subnets or on-prem or Oracle Cloud or whatever, we need to be able to connect to all those sources, and networking, things like that. So all of these things we're going to have to accomplish before the event gets started, just to make sure that we have as much time as we can throughout those 20 hours of building on the solution itself and not worrying about those administrative and technical prerequisite tasks that we should get done. We also offer what we call structured learnings, which are essentially training demos of the services that we're going to be utilizing throughout the event week. We want to establish a baseline familiarity for you and your teams on what these solutions look like, and how to actually access them and how to navigate the OCI console and so on and so forth. Just so that we're all starting from a base understanding of what the services are and how they function, features, functionality, and so on. This is a great opportunity for participants to get exposure to the tools that they'll be developing in. And then we have the event. So what do we ask for as far as event requirements? Well, number one, we ask that you bring your use cases because we want to work on things that you guys want to work on. Then once we know that, we go back internally and ensure that we have the requisite skill sets on our team for any of the technologies that you guys need to solve that problem. And then, and we ask, can we fulfill all the requirements that you're asking for in those 20 hours? Because again, this is just a first pass prototype. It's not meant to be an end-to-end solution, although depending on the simplicity or complexity of the solution or the business problem you bring to us, we'll be able to get a fair bit of along of the way of actually solving the problem in 20 hours of time, believe it or not. So I should mention again that we support multiple use cases or teams during a single event. The ratio to which we staff our events is typically 4 customer attendees or builders with 1 Oracle engineer per team. That just allows everyone to get more time to get hands-on with the and learn how to build an OCI. because we want them to be smaller group sessions so that we can kind of rotate around the team, whether that be on a daily basis or, hourly, whatever it might be, just so everyone can kind of collaborate together. We asked for at least four or more developers or analysts, or associated, technologists. They don't need any prior experience in Oracle services, not necessarily, depending on the technologies involved. We will help meet you guys where you're at. We usually need about 3 weeks of lead time to run an event. 3 weeks of lead time doesn't mean that we're not going to meet for those 3 weeks. It just ensures that we have the correct resourcing from our side as well as for yourselves. Oftentimes, you guys as developers and business units, I'm sure that you run sprints and you're on development cycles and so forth. So we want to make sure we do the event on a time that is best for you and that you can balance the keeping the lights on activities with doing this 20-hour development engagement that week itself. So we're going to have formal cadence meetings with you all, typically at least once a week for 30 minutes leading up to the event, just to discuss those things I talked about, like at the very least doing more use case discovery and trying to hone in on what specifically we're going to accomplish and what you guys need to see as far as the solution is concerned, and agreeing upon logistics. When are we going to do the event? What time of day, and so on and so forth. So I'll say again that this is a 5 half-day event, typically for 4 hours a day. If it's a week that we pick that happens to land on a holiday, whether it's a federal holiday, Oracle holiday, or a customer holiday, we can rotate. We can kind of shuffle that around to make it a 4 day for 5 hours a day configuration. So whether it's 4 or 5 days, we'll just meet that 20 hours, however you see fit. Last but not least, I just want to say that there's no fee to do the event that you have to pay our team beyond the time commitment from both of our sides and the cost of the cloud services that you guys consume to build out the use cases. So the services themselves, but you don't have to pay a fee to participate in the event. And I just want to make one more note that our program currently only supports customers that are accounts that are based here in North America, which happens to be the U.S. and Canadian customers, but we don't currently support any customers outside the U.S. and Canada at this point. But beyond that, I just appreciate you all being here today and taking some time to listen to my presentation. If this program sounds like something that would be that you're interested in exploring and that might be a fit for the use case that you have in mind, there's several different ways for you guys to get in touch with us. You can send us an email using the address on the screen at the codeinnovate_us_grp@oracle.com. You can also add your name and email address into the Q&A section, I believe, and we'll take that down as well. Or if you're working with an Oracle account manager or what we call cloud platform representatives, if you're already working with one of those folks and you get in touch with them, they can also get in touch with us that way, or any other Oracle representative that you guys are dealing with, they can internally get in touch with us as well. But there are multiple ways for you to get in touch with us. But I'd be happy to take this back to any of your teams and talk to them about what we talked about here today and give you more detail and see if it's a good fit for you. Other than that, thank you. And I hope to see you guys again at future cloud coaching seminars. And with that, I will hand it back to Tara.
Thanks, Sean and Wilson and Derek. And thank you all so much for being here with us today. And we hope to see you at the next one.